Hey guys, this is King3 bringing you a live commentary, Forza 5. And today I'm doing a requested car, a 70s Challenger, which I've used before, and it's actually a pretty good muscle car. However, it was not the car that I learned on. I learned how to do my upgrades and parts and settings on the Nova, on the muscle car Nova 396 Nova. But I've applied that thinking to this car, and I've actually ended up making it a pretty decent car here. And I wanted to share you guys the parts and the tuning that I did on it. I'm racing my rival, Moneyman 300, and it looks like he's using like a Lotus Elan or something like that. Small car, it's going to turn quite a bit, but have some good acceleration and still have some pretty good handling. So I want to show you the difference between, what a muscle car is and what that does as well. There's going to be definitely some weaknesses in this car, but overall I've tried to take all of that out, all the weaknesses out of it. Try to make it a lot more handling car. Unfortunately, it still weighs about 4,000 pounds, which I'll show you that when we get to the parts of everything. But it still handles pretty well. But it's really, the strength is definitely the acceleration and the top speed. Even though it's the stock transmission, the top speed still works pretty well in this car because it has real good acceleration. Gets to that top speed a little quicker than most cars do. And I will say that doing a commentary and driving at the same time is not the easiest thing to do in the world. So you're not going to see some fantastic driving here by any means since I'm doing a live comm. And I won't do more than 2 laps. And of course, if you don't want to watch the laps at all, you can just go right on to the parts and tuning to this as well, which I'm going to do at the end of this video. But I always like to kind of show you guys how I drive it. That way you can apply that to what you do. Now, I will say that if you are an assist person, so just so you guys know, I don't use ABS, I don't use traction control. I don't really use any assist anymore. I did use a couple in the past, but I've kind of gotten away from that altogether. But if you do use any of the assist, this actually will apply pretty well. So feel free to, drive with those on. And this is going to come down to the last straightaway, it looks like. He's going to have a little bit of handling here on me, which I'll have to nail these turns somehow. But I should have acceleration off of him here if I can get this hook back up. So keep in mind, this is just one lap that I ran, one full lap against him, so we ended up doing pretty good. Alright, we did alright. So we'll call that good. I only beat him by 0.2 of a second, less than 0.2 of a second. And I think this is probably for 500 to 600 range on the leaderboard. So I'd have to probably do about 9-10 laps, and actually my tires probably aren't even fully pressurized yet, even after just 2 laps on that race. Usually about the 3rd, 4th lap is what it's best for. But it does well early, so if you do take this to a multiplayer or play it in career mode, it actually will work pretty well. So as we go through the menus here, I think it should give us leaderboard, so you guys get an idea where it ended up. 691, so not super strong there yet, but there's definitely some seconds you can gain by replaying that. So let's go check out the parts and the tune, and kind of share with you my ideas of why I did what I did. Now, everything from a tuning perspective is a starting point, so you can take my settings and apply them directly to your car, which is why I do this, so that you can tweak them to your driving style and anything that you want to change. So let's go through the parts real quick. I don't have any engine parts on here, so this is going to be a pretty stock car from a performance standpoint. I have racing brakes on, and I have all these on, all racing components on there. I have the roll cage, and I don't think I was able to do any weight reduction, so it's still full weight. Here I was able to not do the clutch, and I have a stock transmission. I put the race driveline, and that was actually just to make the 400 PI later, after I had everything adjusted. I have the race drivetrain there. We'll go through those in a second. I have the race front and race rear wing on, and I believe I threw one of these on too. Doesn't change the PI or anything, but I did apply the hood scoop there. All right, so the big one here, and I did not do any conversions in this one. No engine changes, no aspiration changes. All right, so from a tire perspective, this is going to be stock here. You just can't do it with the PI. I try to get my PI, I try to get these upper numbers because you definitely want to get the width if you can. But with the PI in this one, I was not able to. So we're looking at the 245s in the front, and I wasn't able to go very wide in the back either, so 295s in the rear. You can see that I tried to get some other settings in there, but my PI just would not allow it. I always do the same wheels, and probably is boring, but I just know these are the heaviest wheels out there. And again, that was a PI ploy as well. And I was not able to do any width. So these are the stock size rim tires. I'd like to do that, but you just can't at the D level on these cars. All right, so let me go through each item here and I'll tell you what I've learned. Some of them are just my basic settings that I use for reasons, and I'll tell you why. And some of them are stuff that I've been learning in the last few weeks as well. So tires is one that I've seen with the muscle cars, especially since I wasn't able to increase the rim size. That I found if you go a little bit lower, they'll heat up a lot better for lapping. They work pretty well at 28.5, but like I said, after the second lap, they're fully heated up. They have the right amount of pressure, and they run really well, especially when I don't have the extra size rims. Now, if I had bigger rims on there, I actually increased the tire pressure. But since I have the stock rims, I actually lowered a little bit. And this has been a real good setting for me front and back for the most part. And I'm talking strictly on the muscle cars, so keep that in mind as well. So this is a stock transmission, so there's no changes I can make there. This has become kind of a standard setting for me with the bigger muscle cars, and I'm talking muscle cars that are 3,500 pounds and more. This changes as the cars get a little bit lighter. But for a 3,500 pound car to 4,000 pound car, this is a really good start from your adjustment. If you want to put this into your settings and then move it from there according to your driving style, I would do that. But you'll see this across this, in the Nova and everything else I have from a muscle car. And actually this carries up to the C class as well, unless you really reduce your weight on those cars. This has been just where I've kind of landed. I was up higher with those and higher with these, and I've actually leveled it out a little bit. Makes it a little bit easier to drive. The front toe, I've always either done a 0 or a 0.1 on the out, and that's a real fine setting, and that depends on if it oversteers or understeers. If it understeers, I would go this way with it. If it understeers, I would go this way with it. But I've been finding that these heavy muscle cars with those tires that I have on there, that this has been a real good setting. This is one that I play with a little bit. This is from stability. Again, turning inability. If it turns in great and you don't want to turn in anymore, you can flatten that out, and that actually helps you with acceleration and braking. But I like it to kind of dive in a little bit, so I go this way with it. So I'm going to leave that at -1. Heavier cars, especially with these higher cambers, I definitely go to the higher angle on the caster. That helps with the suspension quite a bit. And you'll see why here in a bit, because some of these spring settings are pretty soft. Again, I generally start with these in the middle, the anti-roll bars in the middle, and then I adjust them a quarter. So I'll go actually a full quarter. And then if it runs better, then I'll try to tweak it from there. And actually, I did this before. I had them both in the middle, ran them, and I ended up tweaking it just a little bit more and a little bit more. So I'm about right there. With these heavier cars, you generally are on the stiffer side. But this one, I was actually softening it up a little bit to get a little bit better traction. So you'll want to move right to make it easier to drive, and then when it gets too easy, you start backing it up to try to get a little bit more traction. With the softer springs, you'll get a little bit more rotation of the car, and sometimes you want that. You want it to turn around the corner a little bit faster, but you don't want it to be out of control where you're spinning the tires in every corner too. So from a springs perspective, what I've been doing from the front is I've been taking the weight of the car and I've been dividing it by 4 and making that my starting point. This one started in the 900s because this is a 3,900 pound car. And then I worked my way softer to get more control. The rears with the rear-wheel drive cars, you'll find that the rear springs are always going to be softer. And again, that's an acceleration piece. So if you do the same thing, you move both of them, you take the weight, you divide it by 4, you put them in the front and the rear, and if you get too much wheel spin, you start softening that rear spring, and that really helps a lot. And as you can see, I've moved the rear a lot further down than I did the front. But again, it's a starting point, and then you move it down to make it adjustable for yourself. Since this is such a tall car, I always just lower it down. Most cars don't have problems. Some of them that are in the 3-inch range will have problems on some tracks, and you might have to adjust those. But that's a pretty standard setting for me as well. Rebound stiffness is something that I kind of find, and this almost goes across all of them. The rebound stiffness, I start at 10 with it. And in this case, when I moved the front to 10, it actually worked really, really well. I generally take the rear and I move it to half of what I made the front rebound stiffness. And then from there, it's an adjustment. So I was 10 and 5, and I was really happy with the front on this one, the way it was turning in. So I did the rears down to 5, and then I worked my way back up until I felt like I had better control of the car. Now, if I was to soften it up back to 5, you'd see me lose the back end a lot, and I might have problems over some of the bumpier tracks. From a bump stiffness, I have learned from a lot of people. This is something that I used to run probably in the middle, and let me see what that setting would have been. So yeah, I would run it probably right around in here, and I'd run the front and the rear real close to each other. I'd probably be about 2 points less than the rear. What I've been finding is the softer the rear end, the easier it is to keep the body roll under control and to keep the tires on the ground in turns. So where before I used to hit the gas, I would slide out the back end. Now that I've softened this rear and front bump stiffness, it actually keeps the tires on the ground and keeps the power going. So if you are a person that uses a gas pedal and kind of feathers it a little bit, so you don't just full on or full off. If you're a person that knows how to half gas into a corner, this works really, really well, and you'll see your times increase. You'll do so much better with your lapping, and you'll have a lot more control of it. This is one that I've kind of tweaked down to it. I kind of started them both at 2, and I tweaked it a little bit. I moved the front ones up a little bit, and I have the rear ones down a little bit. And this one's I'm actually still working my way down. So that one actually might work even better, like at 1.5 or maybe even 1.0. I really find that this is really soft on a lot of cars. Doing front downforce and rear. Now, if you're going to go and try to beat some laps, and you want to loosen the car up a little bit and run that miracle lap, you can take the downforce off, move it all the way back over to speed. And at the same time, you don't have to adjust anything else. You can really increase your time by just taking your downforce away. Now, I put all the cornering pieces on there because I want the car to handle, and I want to be consistent lap after lap after lap. So this is going to be more for a multiplayer or a career mode. This I could take probably about 2 seconds off of this per lap on that track that you just saw me run by taking the downforce off. It still handles pretty good. You have to drive a lot better. It's a lot more difficult to make a clean, good lap, but when you do, it's amazing how much quicker it is, especially even at a D level. You'll get more top end with your car. You'll get a little bit better acceleration. You can just cut down your time on that. Now you'll have some laps that are 5 seconds slower, but then you'll have some laps that are 2 seconds faster than that. So just keep that in mind. With the braking force, I am a non-ABS user, so I generally start. Now, my theory is, and I think I've seen this out there quite a bit, is that this braking force is backwards. It's incorrect. So I'm actually wanting to increase the braking in the rear a little bit because I have the softer springs in the back, and I don't want to lock up the front. I generally start in a 53, 54 range, and then if I have any kind of lockups, I start moving it a little bit more towards the front. So I was losing the back end a little bit on my braking, so I actually decreased the pressure on the rear, even though that's red the other way. And then my brake pressure, I generally start at 110 and then work my way around that. I think I left it there just because it worked really well with non-ABS. Now, if you have ABS, you might want to crank that up a little bit more. Or it just depends. Some people are really good with them at 140% because it's such a heavy vehicle. I generally run a little bit lower than most. So this has been a big change that I've done in the last couple of weeks as well. I used to probably run this at 10-10, 15-15, maybe 25-25 on the lower horsepower cars. I've actually learned that the higher acceleration is a quicker throttle response. So since I'm doing more control with the gas pedal than I ever have before, where I can do a half gas or, feather a little bit, or, go let it kind of a pumping sensation like you would with a brake, but I do it with the gas instead. I find that this is a lot faster throttle response. So I don't get that out of control around the corner. I'm losing the back end. Now there's nothing I can do about it because I've put too much into it. Now this is a little bit better response on the gas pedal. The deceleration part of it, I still have really, really low because I don't want the car to slow down too fast. The higher you do that, the higher you put a deceleration, the more the car tries to slow down. And I don't want that. I want to be able to let off the gas and coast, but not lose speed at the same time. Sometimes it's just nice to go through a corner where you don't have anything, nothing's decelerating and nothing is accelerating. So I've really gone down in those numbers as well. And if you're comfortable with even a lower, you can do that, or you can bring that back up to 15. But this is the theory that I've been applying to all the muscle cars in the D and the C class. Each one of them will be a little bit different because you're going to have a different ratio on the front. The differential between the weight in the front and the weight in the rear. And I'll show you what this one is real quick. Oops, that's not what I would. Here we go. Act like I'm going to buy a part. So this car weighs 3,900 pounds, has 57% of its weight up front, has a very big engine, and you can see the power and the torque is really high in this car, and that's why I get good acceleration and why I get good top speed. So those are the things that I've been applying to what I've been learning over the last probably 3 or 4 weeks when I've really been trying to fine-tune my D-class muscle cars. I'm trying to take them to even tracks that you need a more handling car than performance car, and they actually work really well there as well. So you could take this to ones that have long straightaways. Sometimes it's even better when you have a lot of turns and you are based out of a lot of acceleration power, because that's what these muscle cars do really well. So that's what I've been building with the muscle cars. That's what I've been applying to it. You can take those numbers and then apply it to the way you drive and tweak it from there. I'm pretty happy where it's at. Very drivable. And good luck, and see if you can do well with multiplayer, and sorry to get some good track times too. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. Catch you later.